What happened? Here we are. Oh my God, it's another night. It's another day. It's another day in the marathon, in the Focus Marathon. Welcome to tonight's episode. Man, I am so excited about tonight. You are in for a treat tonight. But this is going to be a conversation around, if you don't know, well, we'll tell you what the conversation is going to be about in a minute. First of all, we just want to properly greet you. Again, if you don't know us, my name is Antonio Cheeks. I'm here with my wife. Who are you?
I'm Karen.
You're Karen Cheeks. Karen Cheeks, go ahead and greet the people real quick.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 22 of the Focus
Hold
Marathon.
on, wait a minute. Are we talking about day 22 of the Focus Marathon?
Day 22. And, we said that we're going to be doing this conversation for 26 days. And here we are, day 22. We are in the last stretch.
Wow.
Of this marathon.
Coming down, bringing it home. I love it.
Absolutely. So welcome to everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for joining us tonight and all the other nights that you've tuned in. However, if this is your first time, we want to give you a special welcome and say hello. And thank you so much for joining us. And it is a pleasure to have you. Hey, listen, our conversation tonight is going to be one that I think will impact lives and change lives as well. So if you get an opportunity, please share this with someone you know. Send them an email, send them a text message, share it on your social media. Let people know that we're about to have a good conversation. It's very timely for the day and age that we're living in.
Yeah, absolutely. I normally tell people, go ahead, take a pause, pull out your phone, tell people, I know you might have forgot that tonight is another session, and tell them to come on in and join, get the information that you can share with someone else. That's my thing is, it's really giving the information, not so much so you can keep it and hoard it for yourself, but also so you can share it with others, so you can be a blessing. There's a scripture to say, he who refreshes others shall himself be refreshed. And so we want you to be refreshed, and you start by sharing this information. So you got the link. Go ahead and share it with some people so they can see it and jump right on in. I guarantee you this is going to be a dynamic conversation. Tonight. So
absolutely. Part of the reason we decided to do this Focus Marathon is we were looking at the fact that we had 6 months left in the year. And this is because we started in June. And we said, how can we finish this year strong for ourselves?
Right.
But then how can we also encourage, people that either we know or just people in general?
Yeah, that's true.
How can we help to encourage you to finish this year out strong? So the conversation has been around many topics that are impactful to our lives. And we want to share, not only biblical truth, but also some practical steps that you can take as you go throughout the rest of this year.
Yeah, it's one thing to learn a truth, but we want to talk about how to implement those truths. And man, tonight is going to be a good one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tonight is going to be a good one. And if this is your first time coming out, checking us out, you don't want to miss the rest of the shows that are coming out, and also being able to go back and preview and listen to the shows that actually happened before. So how you do that? You subscribe to the channel. You can hit the bell notification so you don't miss another episode. And you're going to be like, man, I missed all this good stuff. Yeah, you did, but that won't happen anymore because today is a new day. All right, baby, let's get into this. I'm ready. I think I might roll up my sleeves for this one.
Yeah, and definitely get your notepad out, your pen, your pencil, your phone, however you take your notes. You're going to definitely want to make sure you get some information down so that either it may help apply to your life or to someone that you know.
Now, let's go ahead and introduce what we're talking about tonight.
Okay.
Tonight's topic, or today or this morning, depending on where you are this afternoon, topic is around mental health and how important mental health, understanding what's happening with mental health, what direction is going in, what do we need to know as individuals, for other people, and for ourselves? What do we need to know when it comes to mental health? So that's what we're getting into tonight, and we have the best person to talk about that tonight, and that's what we're going to go ahead and get into now.
Yeah. So listen, you may have seen this person's name pop up in the chat. He has been with us throughout this focus marathon, and I want to say maybe 18 of the 22 days,
Yeah, I'm
maybe
thinking
19. I don't
he
know.
might. You know what? He's getting the Grand Slam award for consistency, being on the channel and just being a partner with us. So we really appreciate him actually coming out tonight.
Yeah, most definitely, most definitely. So tonight to talk with us about mental health is Dr. Mark Tyler Lloyd. He received his bachelor's degree in biology from Morehouse College and a master's degree in public health from New York Medical College. While in graduate school, he worked with a neuropathology research team investigating multiple sclerosis, and later a counselor in a private psychiatric hospital working with adolescent patients struggling with psychological challenges and substance abuse. Following graduate school, he completed a doctorate in medicine from Upstate Medical Center in New York. And after finishing an internship and residency training in internal medicine and primary care, Dr. Mark began a career in academic medicine, focusing at first on curriculum and content development, and later in teaching physicians in training on topics related to behavioral science, psychiatry, neurology, medical ethics, and preventive medicine. Can we say Dr. Mark is a deep brother? Listen,
Yeah. I
he's
was
a
like,
deep
man,
brother.
boy.
And we're so honored that we have met you and connected with you. You are truly our brother in Christ. And we thank God for the connection with you. And we just want to welcome you as a guest this time to the Focus Marathon.
Let's give him a round of applause, y'all.
Thank you.
And here,
Thank you.
Doc's in the house. That's
Thank
all
you.
right. That's all right, man.
He's been behind the scenes. Now he's on the front scene. So, Mark, greet everybody as you're coming to the Focus Marathon today.
Greetings to everyone. Everyone, thank you for coming. Greetings to you, Minister Antonio and Sister Karen Cheeks, for having the vision of putting this together. I am humbled that you would include me in your list of such distinguished guests and allow me to participate in this wonderful conversation. You all have been my teachers, and it means a lot to me that you would invite me here to participate in this Focus Marathon and continuing in the discussion. And, we're talking about mental health, and Minister Antonio Kisakaran, this topic couldn't be more timely right now. When Minister Cheeks approached me about this and we were looking at focus and kind of what it means. When I think of focus, I think of things like concentration. I think of things like convergence. I think of things that we emphasize. I think of things that we channel our energies. I think of what we aim, what we target. I think of optics. But for the past couple of years, the human condition has been the target of a convergence of societal, a convergence of social, cultural, economic, and existential challenges. And these challenges have been a real threat to our lives. They've been a threat to our livelihood, and they have been a threat to our overall health in general, but to our mental health in particular. The American Psychological Association says that Americans right now today are living in survival mode. Now, it's hard to separate mental health from overall health. Both affect the other. If you're in good physical health, you're in good mental health. If you're in poor physical health, it affects your mental health. If you're in poor mental health, it can affect your physical health. But we'd like to, for this conversation, focus mostly on the mental health. But I do want to mention some things post-pandemic, during pandemic, physically, that have been exacerbated or problematic in our community. First of all, obesity. Well before the pandemic, there was an epidemic of obesity. And during the pandemic, that only got worse. 42% of adults have complained about gaining weight during COVID. And the average weight is as much as 30 pounds. Hypertension, a chronic disease. Victims of hypertension have gotten worse during this COVID issue, and is continuing to get worse. Heart disease. There are at least 20 risk factors of heart disease that have been worsened during COVID. Among them include heart attacks, strokes, mini strokes, congestive heart failure, inflammatory heart disease, pulmonary embolism, deep venous thrombosis, and the list goes on and on and on. Diabetes, you had Minister Reverend Gale here earlier. Diabetes, if you were pre-diabetic before COVID, in all likelihood, you became diabetic. If you were diabetic during COVID, your diabetic management was worsened. But not only that, people who got COVID and survived, 14% of them became new diabetic converts. Even worse than that, children. A child that got COVID and survived is 166% more likely to get diabetes later in life than a child that has not contracted COVID.
Can I jump in real quick?
Please.
I want to just tell people, you done heard, he's opening. This is his opening. So don't wait. Get your questions ready. So if you have a questions as we go through this presentation tonight, make sure you put a Q in front of the question so we know we can highlight that and make sure we pull it up because we care about you and your questions and we want to make sure we answer your questions. So make sure you do it and don't wait. Don't hesitate. Put your questions out there. Go ahead, Dr. Mark. I'm sorry.
Sure. Yeah. No. Interrupt me anytime. Anytime.
You got so much stuff, man. I'm like, whoa.
Anytime. No. But these sobering and staggering statistics that I've given you relative to our health statistics pales in comparison to the impact that COVID and post-COVID has had on our mental health. There has been a tremendous increase in anxiety, a tremendous increase in depression, and an increase in anxiety and depression even more so. In 2020, the diagnoses of depression tripled. A more recent CDC survey says that it has actually quadrupled. Not only that, suicide has gone up, and the suicide has gone up in a very interesting way. There are some people that went through the COVID experience and they tended to benefit from it. But the people who did not, people of color, Latino people, women more than men, and our adolescent community, and the older population, the suicide rates there have gone up tremendously. Adolescent suicide, particularly for Gen Z and millennials, for women, it's gone up as much as 70%. And in men, it's going up, young men, this is going up as much as 20%. And we're really concerned about our adolescent teenage girls and how they're struggling with suicide at this point.
So Dr.
Post-traumatic stress disorder. Did you have a question? Someone had a question?
I did.
Okay.
So when you're getting these stats, is there any indication why you're seeing the increase? I mean, I think we can maybe make a leap, but is there research that talks about why we're seeing this?
Okay. Yes. Okay. So in the adolescent population, part of it has to do with social media. And the reason we see it more in females than in males, and I'll give you this illustration. I want you to imagine a stadium filled with adolescent boys and girls. The stadium holds 100,000 people, 50,000 girls, 50,000 boys. In the stadium, Minister Cheeks announces, I want everyone to look under your chair. And the adolescents look under their chair, and right under their chair is a brand new state-of-the-art smartphone. Question. What are the boys going to do with the smartphone?
That's a good question. Look for a game?
Computer games. They're going to play games.
A game,
even violent games. Oh, but they're going to play games.
Right.
What are the girls going to do with the smartphone?
Selfies.
Selfie, yep.
Selfies. But then what happens after the selfie?
They're gonna share it, and then they're gonna get feedback.
Share it and wait.
Oh,
wait
okay.
To be liked. Wait to get the thumbs up. Wait, and this, adolescents. This is a very, very vulnerable time for them. Adolescents struggle with identity and role confusion. So that's why the girls, their egos are fragile. There's a lot of cyberbullying going, but that's why when they don't get that kind of positive reinforcement and they don't have other social skills to work with, that makes them that much more vulnerable to depression, depressed moods, and even wanting to take their lives.
Man, okay. This is a big undertaking.
Yeah.
What's around the corner?
Well, I mean, we're trying to find, well, first of all, we're just trying to get a handle on dealing with this right now.
Yeah.
We're just trying to deal with this right now.
Wow.
But beyond suicide, post-traumatic stress
Mm-hmm.
disorder. And this, as you know, this is once something that was confined just to combat.
Mm-hmm.
But over time, the criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder has widened dramatically in recent years.
Do tell.
Dude, we're seeing now, first of all, during COVID, healthcare workers were suffering from PTSD. Next, we saw first responders that were dealing with PTSD. Now we're seeing the survivors of COVID who are complaining and referencing now having post-traumatic and acute stress disorders relative to surviving COVID. And we're seeing those who have taken care of people with COVID. Either the outcomes were very poor, they died, or they struggled very, very badly. Caregivers of people with COVID are talking about post-traumatic stress disorder, suffering from post-traumatic distress disorder. And the numbers are skyrocketing.
Wow.
Anything else? Substance abuse, substance use disorders, substance-related disorders have gone up. They've gone up in response for people looking for ways to escape, people looking ways to self-medicate in dealing with the challenges that they're facing relative to the increase in mental health challenges. And then overdose, either accidental or intentional. We're seeing a rise in those. These kinds of mental health challenges and dilemmas far outweigh the physical dilemmas, and the diabetes and the hypertension and the cardiovascular disorders. At some point, they're going to get better. But we're seeing the rise in mental health disorders not getting better. They're remaining high. Example, if there's a natural flood, a major hurricane floods a town, you see an increase in anxiety, you see an increase in depression, and it's sharp increase. It lasts about a year and it drops off precipitously within a year. We're seeing things that have tripled in 2020 and quadrupled now, and it's not going down. That's the problem.
And would you, because every time you turn on the news, you hear about a new variant coming out, and I think it's cause for, you think it seems like we've gotten a handle, and then every time it feels like, we've gotten a handle, then it's like another curveball comes with this pandemic. And would you say that is a contributing factor, or are there other things that, contribute to the continued rise?
Well, yeah. So cases of COVID even now are rising, but because of vaccinations and other things, hospitalizations are going down and death rates are going down. But as these variants evade the protection that we have from vaccinations, these mutations can make the situation worse. And so because COVID isn't necessarily completely gone, because we're seeing a rise in cases, because some people tend to be more relaxed, that's dangerous. And people are still somewhat shell-shocked by the impact, because let's face it, in our lifetime, no one has seen anything as unprecedented as the COVID-19 challenge and the COVID-19 pandemic and global pandemic. So that's part of the issue there.
All right, let's take a breather. So we're on today. This is the Focus Marathon, and we're talking today with Dr. Mark Tyler Lloyd, and we're talking about mental health in our Focus Marathon. Doctor, let's take a moment and shift over to see at this point in the presentation if there's any questions about what we've had or seen or talked about so far. Because, man, can I tell you, I feel kind of helpless. So I know that there has to be some stuff that you're gonna, I hope that you share with us, like that, give us that ray of hope, in our presentation. But let's go ahead over and just take a look here and see if we have anything that might be a question or a comment from some. Oh my God. Okay. So we got a few things. We got some wows. We got. Here's one I think that might be interesting as let me bring this one up. And I think this was talking about trauma.
Yeah.
And you see this one right there, as a reaction to abnormal or traumatic events. Those things are helping, like pushing us into this anxiety state.
Yep.
And so that's pretty good in VJazz in noting that is something we have to look out for. Because I want to know tonight, Man, I got a lot of questions. I don't want to take it away from everybody else, but I want to know, how do I recognize the signs of someone that's going through a mental health challenge, or and how do I recognize it in myself?
Yes.
It's some things that I'm going through, and you guys that are listening, you might be thinking some of
Yes.
these questions. Make sure you put them out there. And
Yes.
we want to go deep.
Yes, absolutely. We'll do it, and we will do that. So first of all, I'd
Man,
just like to recognize Brother James Cooper.
yeah, go
I see
ahead.
my sister Anita. I see Reverend Terry. Thank you to honor Reverend Terry. Always honored to see you, and my brother Vaughn VJazz. VJazz is talking about as from the Healing Transition Bereavement Ministry. Yet people have been traumatized. COVID-19 has traumatized our world and our community. So now, here's how I want to address your question, because again, it's focus.
Mm-hmm.
And again, the human condition has become the focus of an assault from COVID-19, as it manifests itself in both health conditions and mental health conditions. Our response should be a counter focus to that. Now, and as you talked about earlier, Minister Cheeks, focus tends to do with lenses, trying to get the right clarity. So if you're trying to look at something in its microscopic view, you use a microscope. If you're trying to look at something very far away, you want to use a telescope. But in order for us to really approach a mental health focus, the lens we must use is a three-dimensional lens. Mm-hmm. And the reason I say it's a three-dimensional lens is because we live in a three-dimensional space. We exist, we interact, and we engage other people in three dimensions. And so the three-dimensional approach that I would like us to focus on when looking at mental health challenges is a psychological dimension, a biological dimension, and a theological dimension.
Okay.
And
you got my attention.
And the reason I want to look at three dimensions, because I don't want us to look at these as silos.
Okay.
I don't want us to look at mental health disorders or challenges can only be rectified with psychological approaches. We need to understand the psychology, we need to understand the biology, we need to understand the theology and how they work together, and have a comprehensive approach to making sure that our focus is correct. Mm-hmm. So let's look at the psychological factors at first. Over time, psychiatric diseases have expanded. It's very important for me to say, first of all, that there is a difference between having a mental illness and having poor mental health. It's not the same thing. Mm-hmm. And let's use Reverend Bustle's example. Reverend Bustle's talked about diabetes. You can be diagnosed with diabetes, which is an illness, but you can be taking your insulin, you can be taking your glucophage, your glucose levels can be controlled, and you are living a healthy life and health lifestyle. You have exercise, you're dieting. So even though you have diabetes, you can still be healthy in the way in which you have managed your diabetes. The same thing with mental health illnesses. Mental health illnesses are simply a mental health diagnosis. But that does not necessarily mean that you're in poor mental health. You could have a diagnosis of depression. You could have a diagnosis of bipolar. You could have a diagnosis of schizophrenia. But you can be managing your diagnosis with appropriate medication, with appropriate therapy, and be in good mental health. You may not have a specific mental health diagnosis, but you could be struggling with stress at work, stress at home, stress with your children. And as a result of that stress, you're overwhelmed, you're worrying, you're down, you have a depressed mood. That is poor mental health, and that could lead to mental illnesses. That's one thing I want you to understand. From the biological, the psychological approach, first thing I want you to understand that we have no problems going to the doctor every year and getting an annual checkup. We have no problems going to the dentist twice a year and getting a checkup. But somehow the stigma attached to mental disorders and mental challenges, people don't necessarily get an annual checkup to look at their overall mental health. And we should do this as a preventive measure. Now, when you see the doctor, your doctor should be addressing and assessing the stressors in your life, knowing that the more stressors you have, the more they compound and can cause physiologic changes, and they can also cause mental health changes. But if they don't do that, then do that for yourself. And the reason I say if they don't do that is I have a very sobering statistic here. Before COVID, 50% of the people that committed suicide saw a doctor within 30 days, and it was missed. They checked off the boxes, but it was missed. They didn't ask the right questions, and it was missed. And so when I teach doctors, I make sure they understand that when you see a patient, don't miss any of the signs and symptoms. So what are those signs and symptoms? What are the things we want to look for? Some of them are overt, and some of them are insidious. If the red flags, if you have problems with your sleep, if there are changes in your interest level, things you used to like to do, but you don't like to do anymore, red flag. If there are changes in your eating habits, eating too much, or particularly having no appetite, red flag. If you have a difficulty concentrating, red flag. If your energy level is low, red flag. If you're constantly dealing with guilt, looking back on things of your life and having a problem with guilt, red flag. If you're finding yourself withdrawing from social circles and isolating, red flag. If you're struggling with issues of helplessness and hopelessness, red flag. Now, what I suggest you do is find someone to talk to. Get into support groups. Find a therapist. Therapists come in many flavors. They can come from pastoral care. They can come from social workers. They can come from psychologists. They can come from psychiatrists. But find a therapist in which there's a relationship that you trust, a relationship that works with you. They ask the right questions and help lead you to better identifying some of the stresses in your life so you can free yourself from them. That tends to be overt.
Can we take a pause?
Sure.
Can we take a pause?
Yes.
Woo. I don't know about the people that are listening, but I was like, wow.
Yeah, I'm jotting down notes.
I was like, okay, here's my question.
Yes.
Is there a particular cocktail or mix of the list you just made, in a sense where, hey, if you have 3 of the many, 4 of them, maybe 2, hey, that's not a problem? Or is there certain ones on here that might be more problematic than others? So one, is there a certain number of these that you listed that, hey, you know what, let me go ahead and have a conversation? And 2, are there some things on here that are more critical than others?
Yeah. Okay. Excellent question. Excellent question. And to make the diagnosis of a specific mental health disorder, you have to fulfill a certain criteria. So let's just take major depressive disorder. You have to have 5 symptoms of depression. Okay. And one of them must be lack of interest or depressed mood, and then 4 others. And you must have them for a period of 2 weeks. If you have that, you satisfy the criteria of major depressive disorder.
Could you say that one more time?
So you have to have 5 out of 9 symptoms of depression. One of them must be depressed mood or anhedonia. Anhedonia is a fancy word for saying loss of interest in things that you once found pleasurable. Mm-hmm. So those are required. And then 4 other, like lack of sleep, irritability, change in eating habits, change in weight, any of these other 4 for 2 weeks, that fulfills the criteria.
Okay, the 2 weeks. I didn't have the 2 weeks. Yeah.
2 weeks. Bipolar is different. Bipolar, you have to have 4 symptoms of mania for 5 days. 4 symptoms of mania, just mania, and that's bipolar 1. And mania could be pressured speech, flight of ideas, distractibility, irritability, grandiosity, any 4 of those things, going on shopping sprees, going on promiscuous sprees, those kinds of things for 5 days, then 3 to 4 of those within 5 days, that fulfills the criteria of mania.
So, Dr.
Yeah,
Mark,
good grief, go for it.
So,
oh my gosh.
Those 2 examples you gave, like the depression, bipolar, that's on the spectrum of mental illness, right?
Yes.
And so if you're in that state, like a person, if they recognize, well, they may or may not recognize they're in that state. So if you're on the outside, if it's a family member or a friend and you recognize that person's in that state, what can you do as a support system to assist a loved one, a friend in going through something like that?
Yeah. So with bipolar, often because it's so acute within 5 days, oftentimes people who have a manic episode or bipolar episode are brought to a physician's office by family members or friends because they've been acting strangely and having kind of strange behaviors. People with bipolar, when you think of the grandiosity, when you think that they don't have to sleep, they have a sense of immortality. They're not, some people in your inertial stages of bipolar feel like they can conquer the world. They feel immortal. They feel great. So they're not going to come to the emergency department and say, I feel great. Can you help me with that? Right. Generally, it's the people in the family that bring them there, unless their bipolar features have psychotic features. And then that's a whole nother issue. And it's likely to be very, very disruptive in their family system. You see someone with depression, sometimes with someone who's suffering from depression and depressed mood, they themselves might seek help just because it's too painful to live this way, to exist this way. But often if you see someone that's absolutely withdrawn, hard to reach, doesn't want to talk about anything, just kind of isolates themselves, you should ask them and approach them, what's going on? What can you do? Are you talking to somebody? And help facilitate with them, and even say, I'll take you with you. I'll go with you to a situation like that. So that's some of the things you want to do.
All right, let's take a breather and see if by chance there might be a question, comments, or concern. You can go ahead and take a look over there and see if there's something you want to bring up. I just want to, when the topic is like this, I want to make sure that the questions that people may have are answered. And I know I see a couple of great questions. We're trying, ladies and gentlemen. We're trying to get the questions out there. But if you have something, make sure you put it in the chat there. I see James Cooper. That's good. It's a diagnosis, but not our identity. Let's go ahead and bring that one up. That was a good one as I was looking. Thanks,
good, Mr. Cooper. Yeah. Good, Reverend Cooper, Pastor Cooper. Yes,
man, you done got deep on him, right? You found out.
Absolutely. This is not who you are. This is not who you are. Just like you have a diagnosis of diabetes, but you are not your identity is not diabetic. You're struggling, and we teach us, if someone has schizophrenia, you shouldn't say he's schizophrenic. You should say he's struggling with schizophrenia.
That's
a more appropriate way, because it also removes the stigma of that as well.
That's good. There was another one by the great Right Reverend Pastor Cooper. He talked about questions. Let me just bring it up, because when I look at it over the side, he was talking about, we heard the problem, doc. Now, what are some? And we're starting to get into that now. There was one about stats about this particular area, though.
Okay, I don't see that. Don't tell me. My sister Anita.
You probably got that right.
My sister. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. So Prince George's County, for example, higher rates of COVID than any other county in Maryland.
Wow.
It's off the charts. Generally, counties where there are more people of color, you tend to see more sequela of these mental health challenges.
Look, man, I got to get my hold on, let me get my dictionary. He's gonna be breaking out these words and stuff. I'm like, what?
Well, sequela. I'm sorry, manifestations. I'm sorry, manifestations.
But I love being stretched though, because that's what happens when I talk to Karen. She'll, be yelling at me and stuff like that. And I'm saying, wait a minute, I'm gonna come back to this conversation as soon as I figure out what those words mean, and we'll pick that conversation up. But go right ahead, my man.
Okay. All right. So that's the psychological dilemma, and I would encourage you, don't fall prey to fear of a stigma. It's important. A great investment in yourself is to do an annual health test, stress test, talk to somebody. And that's even if you're well, but if you're not, find someone to talk to and get this thing out so that you don't bury it alive and it manifests itself in other ways.
Right.
The biological factors. So these diseases, these mental health illnesses, these challenges oftentimes are related to stress. So let's talk about poor mental health even before we talk about mental illness.
Okay.
When a person is stressed, remember when we were doing the leadership class, we talked about flight or flight syndrome.
Yep.
So that's an important physiological response we have to something that's life-threatening. But when you have a flight or fight syndrome, chemicals are put into your system to allow you to either fight or flee. But when you're dealing with a pernicious and insidious and discrete and continual form of stress, these chemicals continue to pour out, but now they damage your vessels. There's not one organ system that is not insulated from the effect of long-term stress, particularly the mind and the brain. So you want to reduce stress and stress factors. This is another biological factor. Number two, so you mentioned schizophrenia. Right? Schizophrenia is, and there are several forms of it. It's a psychotic disorder. It's a thought disorder where a person struggles with hallucinations, struggles with delusions, things of that nature. If you have it for 1 day and less than 30 days, it's not schizophrenia. It's called brief psychotic disorder. If you have it for 31 days, but less than 6 months, it's called schizophreniform disorder. If you have it for more than 6 months, now it's called schizophrenia. But the treatment is the same. It's an antipsychotic medication. It is believed that people who suffer from psychosis, from schizophrenia, they have too much of this chemical called dopamine. So the medications that you give them are dopamine blockers. They block the effects of dopamine, and that's helpful. So don't walk away or shy away from the biological remedies that can address these issues. Anxiety and depression, they're very closely related, even though they're unusual experiences. But a person who has depression tends to have low levels of certain chemicals in their brain. Chief among them is serotonin, but another one among them is norepinephrine. So the medications they give now are antidepressants. Either they improve the release of serotonin or they inhibit the reuptake of serotonin and norepinephrine to make them more available to the person. Anxiety disorders. It was later discovered that people who were taking these medications can also benefit from challenges with anxiety disorders. So the same medications that you would give to treat someone with major depressive disorder is the same medication that you give to treat someone with generalized anxiety disorder, because it's the same neurochemicals that tend to be involved. And so you have to understand that biology and not run from the biology and use the biology to your advantage. So that's the biological forces.
So Dr. Mark, so I love that you're talking about the medicine, because I've heard feedback from various people who maybe have to take medication where they've had adverse effects from the medicine. So maybe gaining weight,
weight gain,
or not having, and I guess if you have that bipolar, trying to get them on an even keel, but it sometimes it may keep them too low. You know what I mean? Like they don't feel the full range of emotions. So when people are taking medicine and maybe, they don't want to take it because it's like, I don't feel like myself. That's something I've heard. What is the response to that to encourage them to take their medication? Is it going back to the doctor to find something that's a better fit for them? What kind of things can we encourage people who maybe need to take medication for a certain period of time?
Yeah. So depending on the disorder, so if an antidepressant isn't working, you could switch to a different class of antidepressant. If there are 2 generations of antipsychotics, if one isn't working with weight gain and some other issues, we can switch to another antipsychotic. We can certainly try to accommodate someone who is uncomfortable with the side effects, but the side effects are not nearly as bad as the actual illness itself. And so we should encourage people to understand that this will help you, and help you to move through society and keep you more mentally healthy and mentally fit.
All right.
Go ahead.
No, I just want to make sure I got 3 questions. I thought I saw 3 questions in the box that I want to make sure you get. Starting with VJazz, I think you see that, Vaughn, and then Eva, and then Miss Anita. You see those 3? I'll bring them up for you.
Okay.
Yep. There you go.
Family is often the hardest to engage about this is from BJ, about symptoms that you might recognize. Any recommendation how to approach in that instance? So Vaughn, just what you're saying is that you're seeing symptoms in your loved one and you recognize it, but how do you approach that with the loved one?
I think that's it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so all right, so that's a very, 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 very good question. I want to first of all focus on it from the loved one standpoint. So remember, I was telling you that you need to have the self-care
Mm-hmm.
and how I said things can be pernicious and insidious. Another way to focus on your mental health is to listen to what people are saying to you. So if someone says to you, hey, you don't seem yourself, is everything okay? If you are aware of what they're talking about and they are in your inner circle, use that as an opportunity to talk about what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But if your reflex is, I have no idea what they're talking about, stop. Because they're seeing something that you may not see, and take that as an opportunity to self-reflect and course correct. Because oftentimes levels of anxiety and our responses to these things are subconscious. And we're not even aware of it because our brain is trying to protect us from it. Because if we became aware of it, the breakdown would be even worse. So in a very, very compassionate and thoughtful way, approach your loved one from the standpoint of caring and concern,
Mm-hmm.
but find ways that don't make them feel confronted, but find ways to make them feel that you're trying to understand.
Gotcha.
And if you can make that connection, they're in all likelihood going to respond favorably. They're going to admit or recognize what you're talking about and then be open to whatever avenues and options are available for these things to be remediated.
Wow, that's good. So don't go nowhere. We got a few more questions for you, and then I want you to jump back into. Okay, man, stuff just popping up. Okay, here we go. Let's go here. Are hormones involved in deep, in a deep limbic system? Yeah.
So limbic system. So remember how Minister Chief, you talk about that reticular activating system?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and the limbic system is a kind of our emotions and things like that.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But as Joshua Parker talked about, we also have this prefrontal cortex
Mhm.
that also gives us our executive functioning and our judgment and our dealings and so on and so forth. And there's an addiction pathway that's not a part of the limbic system, but it's a part of the mesolimbic cortex, and it allows us to have chemicals that hijack that pathway and make us dependent on these things in substance use disorders. So yes, hormones, chemicals. When I say chemicals, for example, neurohumors or nerve hormones are chemicals, but I don't want to get too like dopamine, like acetylcholine, like serotonin.
Mhm.
These are neurotransmitters, but in some cases they're called neurohumors or neurohormones as well.
Good, because I think you're answering the next couple of questions that are coming up. So
Okay.
this one here, what about natural approach versus chemical?
Mhm.
And then there's one, there's two more, and then we're going to go back to your presentation. So here's
Okay.
a question here from Anita. She wants to know, okay, well, what about a natural approach versus a chemical
Okay.
approach
So,
to? Yeah.
all right. So when you say a natural approach, you're talking about doing something naturally versus taking medication.
And maybe she's talking about herbs or something like that as well. Versus, yeah.
I'm not a good natural approach is exercise.
Ooh,
Because
yes.
exercise releases natural chemicals in the brain. They're called endorphins. They're called enkephalins, and they make us feel better. It's the kind of thing that people have when they call it having a runner's high.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a good way to release natural chemicals that could be protective with your mental health, is doing something like that. But if you have a deficiency in serotonin, or if you have an excess in dopamine, or if you have a deficiency in norepinephrine, you're going to need these medications that help address that are also effective. I'm not aware of herbal medications that necessarily have the same effectiveness as the ones that have been proven in psychopharmacology.
So marijuana is not the answer.
No.
Okay. Just in case Anita was trying to slide that one in. So, all right, let me go ahead. Oh, okay. Let me go. She said, great answer. But let me take this one here. It says, Doc, can you speak to the difference between being depressed versus having a diagnosis of clinical depression?
Yeah. Okay. Very. So depressed can be a very generic thing, just feeling down, just feeling low. As a matter of fact, there is a diagnosis called persistent depressive disorder. These are the people that are and in order to make the diagnosis, you've got to be feeling this way for 2 years. 2 years. To make the diagnosis of depression, it's 2 weeks. Clinical depression, the person struggles, they can't even function. They can't even summon and get the kind of energy just to get out of bed. It is a debilitating disorder. Whereas depressed mood and just feeling depressed, you can function, but there's just something going on. You just don't feel right. You just don't feel yourself. You don't feel good. You're not feeling elevated. Clinical depression, far more debilitating, but depressed mood and having the depressed thoughts is far more common.
Okay. And lastly, I want to make sure I didn't miss Miss Eva. Did we talk this about neurotransmitters? Did we talk about that? Can be.
Yeah, we did. But Sister Eva says, can you be sure if it's an injury or a neurotransmitter deficiency or excess?
Gotcha.
So that's a good question.
Mhm.
That's a very, 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 very good question. It tends to be, now, if you had a traumatic brain injury, that can certainly interfere with your neurosynaptic transmissions. And that can create a deficiency or a challenge with the way in which those chemicals are secreted.
Mhm.
But some people, when we talk to the biological factor, some people just have a biological predisposition to having low levels of neurotransmitters under certain circumstances. So one or the other, but the remedy is still going to be the same. Because you may not be able to fix the traumatic brain injury because that would require neurosurgery. But you may be able to circumvent that by supplying the kind of neurochemicals that may be deficient in the person's brain.
All right, we're going to turn this back over to you. So you got the show. Go ahead. Go.
Okay. All right. We talked about the psychological. We talked about the biological. I'm just talking. There are genetic factors. There are stress factors. Chemicals are released. People's brain chemistry are wired in a certain way. And we talked about the effects of medication. Now I want to talk about the theological dimension or theological perspective. And here I kind of want to go way back. I want to go back to 1902. The father of American psychology, his name was William James. And in 1902, William James observed in his patients a serious level of depression. And these are the words he used, and I will quote him. He said, "There is a pitch of unhappiness so great that the goods of nature may be entirely forgotten, and all sentiment of their existence vanish from the mental field." He went on to say that these patients seem as though they are the prey of an evil, pathological melancholy. And the title of this manuscript was called The Sick Soul. This is a Harvard physician first describing depression in 1902. And he used the word soul, and he used the word sick, and he used the word evil. Then I want to go back 50 years after that. A theologian named Paul Tillich. Paul Tillich said that the mid-1900s was the age of anxiety. And what Paul Tillich said then is even more applicable now. But what Paul Tillich was saying is that the human condition is under assault on these anxious forces. And he said there were three of them. And first of all, he described anxiety as this. He distinguished it from fear. He said anxiety is excessive and unfocused fear. That's how he described anxiety. And he said people struggle or being attacked with the anxiety of fate. But ultimately, that translates into an excessive and unfocused fear of death. Then he said people struggle with the anxiety of guilt. But ultimately, that translates into an excessive and unfocused fear of condemnation. And then he said people struggle with the anxiety of emptiness. And that translates ultimately to a focus, unconscious focus or unfocused, and emphasis on meaninglessness. And then he goes on to say, as these forces converge, they create a condition in the human psyche of despair. And those channels of despair then lead to desperation, then lead to depression, then lead to anxious forces. That was in the mid-1950s. It's even more so today. But what Paul Tillich said is that we need to recognize that there is a spiritual response to this. So if we look, let's look at faith, fate, and death. Okay. If you remember John Donne wrote this poem. He said, "Death, be not proud. Though mighty and dreadful some say you are, that is not so. One short sleep we wake eternally, and thou shalt be no more. Death, thou shalt die." The mystic novelist said, "No grave is washed by weeping. For those who believe have no grief. For those who hold love in keeping need fear no mortal thief." But the Bible says, "O death, where is thy sting? And O grave, where is thy victory?"
Mm-hmm.
Let's look at condemnation, and let's look at guilt and condemnation. William Crawley in the 1800s penned a poem that was turned into a hymn, and the words go something like this: "There's a fountain filled with blood, drawn from Emmanuel's veins, and sinners plunged beneath the flood lose all their guilty stains. And the Bible says, therefore, there is no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus."
Yes.
And let's look at the anxiety of meaninglessness and emptinessness. Let's go to Corinthians. 3 things will remain forever. Now abideth faith, hope, and love. Tillich said that faith is deprived by our doubt. And anything that experiences deprivation must be fed. And we feed our faith by hearing and hearing God's word. Faith moves God. Grace and faith saves us. So that's an important thing. Hope. No, hope is eternal. Hope is important. Hopelessness is a real feeling. I don't want to diminish and devalue anyone that is experiencing hopelessness. It is a real, dark, deep, debilitating, dismantling feeling. And in that darkness, it feels as though it will never get better. But hopelessness is a real feeling. Hope is a reality. So you can feel hopeless, but hope is real. And hopelessness may feel permanent, but hope is eternal. And so you can be experiencing and struggling with a state of hopelessness, but you always have hope available to you. God promised it to us. Hope springs eternal. And then love. The love of God. It's unconditional love. So God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, and whosoever believeth in him shall not perish, but have everlasting life. Unconditional love has the power to heal our mortal wounds from a sovereign God who is immortal. And so Tillich looks at these spiritual antidotes to dealing with the spiritual dimensions which can cause mental health problems. Any questions before I go on?
Yeah. Who are you?
I'm your student. I'm your student, bro. I'm your student.
We're over here going like, what is happening? We like, no, hold on. What we got here? Your sister was like, preacher. Oh man. I saw some other stuff. Yeah, man. Hey, dude. This is fantastic. I am loving this. I am loving it. We got Bring It Doc. Great teaching. I hope you're seeing. I hope you're seeing how people are loving. They're showing their love for you, man. So I'm loving it.
Thank you.
Somebody say, "I know, right?" You know, what I'm saying? Even say, "I know what's going on."
Thank you.
However,
yes,
great teaching, and I am so just. I'm gonna look at this over and over again. I just want you to know that I'm gonna be looking at this over and over again, and I know people are gonna be coming back and saying, "What was that one about the mental health?" That doctor was talking. The doctor, jackleg preacher, doctor was talking about mental health, and he went on and started breaking it down for us. Hey, Mark, this was a good job, man.
So in the theological response, it's important to get connected to a church. You can't benefit from these biblical truths if you're not a believer, if you're not connected with the church. Now, the three of us happen to be members of the First Baptist Church of Glen Arden, of which Minister Antonio, how many ministries are there now? What,
Over 100 something, over 100 and something, yeah, and counting.
Okay. I am a part of the Education and Training Department, and which has 4 groups. And within that 4 groups, I am a part of the Health and Wellness group. Now, within the Health and Wellness group, you have Bodies by Christ. Body stands for Believers Overcoming Destructive Yokes. James Tate. I think y'all going to have him pretty soon, right?
Yes. In a couple of days.
That's the man. That's the man. Yeah. There's cancer support. There's crisis care. There's the Healing, Transition, and Bereavement Ministry. Brother Vaughn talked to you about that. And
yes.
And I'm a part of that ministry. Deaconess Mary Wright is the head of that ministry. There's the health ministry. Sister Tiffany Simmons, and talk about health fairs and screenings and things of that nature. There's Life Builders, Reverend Josephine, your friend, Reverend Josephine, Life Builders, and Life Builders Live. That's helpful. There's Turning Point, where individuals overcome life-controlling problems like substance abuse and anger and addiction. But the ministry that I want to highlight is the Mental Health Support Ministry. This is a ministry where it's peer support. It's not counseling, but it's peer support. If you're struggling with a mental health challenge, diagnosed or undiagnosed, or if you have a family member that has a mental health challenge, diagnosed or undiagnosed, you'll want you to send an email to the Mental Health Support Ministry, and you will get a registration form. They meet Thursday evenings between 7 and 9 o'clock. It's a private meeting. It's a confidential meeting. It's a safe place. There's no judgment, but it is very, very supportive. So,
how private, you said you didn't mention who was leading that one. Is that kind of like So I talk about James Tate and whatever. In the Mental Health Support Ministry, we do not share names. That's good.
We do not share names. So I can't tell you who. The only name a person can share is their own if they choose to.
Mm-hmm.
We don't share stories. We don't share names. We don't judge, but it's helpful. But in full disclosure, I don't run it, but I attend it. I participate in it, and I have been a beneficiary of it. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage people to take advantage of that as well. And you see right on the board there.
Any other resources for the people listening?
Suicide. I just want if anyone is struggling with suicide, there's a national suicide prevention hotline. Sometimes things are so deep, so dark with depression. The question is not why kill myself. The question is why not? Things are so distorted. The focus is so contorted. The reality is so bent. The hopelessness is so hopeless. The helplessness seems unfixable, that taking your life and escaping the pain seems like a reasonable response. Mm-hmm. And so like I said, the doctors missed it. If you see someone in a deep depression, you must ask the question, are you having thoughts of hurting yourself or harming yourself or things of that nature? That's one. Number two, if they get help and to start an antidepressant, do you realize that they are at more risk for suicide than they were before they started the antidepressant?
Didn't know that.
Because things are so deep and so dark and no energy, no will. They don't have the will to live, but they don't even have the will to take their own lives, even though they don't want to live. But an antidepressant can take anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to really kick in. Mm-hmm. So you start taking the antidepressant. It doesn't cure your depression. It doesn't even cure your will to live, but it gives you the energy to take your own life. So if someone starts an antidepressant who wants to commit suicide, that person needs to be monitored and followed up far more frequently than before.
Wow, sir. Hey, let's do that. Man, I'm just so overwhelmed. I'm going to look at this over and over again. You just had some nuggets, and they're not chicken nuggets. We've already established that we're not doing chicken nuggets on this show.
No.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to continue to receive information like this, I would challenge you, or just suggest, it's just a suggestion, that if you like what you heard tonight, you might want to consider subscribing. It's just a suggestion and liking what you just heard. And then share the information with people. It's just a suggestion. If you think someone that you know, a family member, a friend, an acquaintance, might benefit from this information, please share it. Please share it and come back and look at it again. Doctor, you mind if we go over and look at the comments and see what's going on?
Hey, man.
All right, let's go ahead.
I'm with you, man. As long as I can hang out with you, I'm happy.
We'll go ahead over and let's take a look and see what's happening over and you can feel free to peruse that as much as you want.
Yes, I see that. Yes. Thank you, Sister Eva. Thank you, Sister Anita. These are my alumni. This is from spiritual. This is the spiritual gifts crew is in the house.
That's right. Okay. They're in deep.
Yes. Sister Anastasia. Yes. I was so moved by what you and Brother Joshua shared the other day. So yes, thank you, and thank you for coming. V-Jazz, Vaughn. I mean, what can I say? I mean, my brother. Yes. Sister Eva, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. Just as I thank you for sharing that. Reverend Cooper, thank you. Your wisdom the other day is an inspiration to me. So thank you very much for that.
Look, I like what Reverend Cooper, Mr. Cooper said. He said, Antonio is being nice. I'm not suggesting. I'm saying hit the subscribe button. That's what I'm talking about. Thank you, Dr. Cooper. I appreciate that, my man. My man.
So one of the things, something that Sister Karen had said, if someone has a phobia, if someone has a fear, whatever, one of the ways in which we would approach that psychologically is what we call systematic desensitization. Under the science of anxiety and relaxation cannot take place or cannot exist at the same time and same space. Okay. And relaxation comes in many forms. Relaxation comes in deep breathing exercises. Relaxation comes in yoga. Relaxation comes in meditation. But somebody gave a presentation on focusing or fixing a fractured focus. And someone talked about Paul's letter to the Philippians. And someone said something along the lines of meditate on these things. Finally, brethren, whenever things are true, whatever things are noble, whatever things are just, whatever things are pure, whatever things are lovely, whatever things are good report. If there is any virtue, if there is anything praiseworthy of it, meditate on these things.
I wonder if people in the chat can figure out who that was.
It was somebody profound. It was somebody profound. It was somebody who talked about joy in jail. So it was somebody that talked about it. It was somebody profound.
Wow. I've had a blast.
Yes.
I've had a blast. I didn't know what to expect. I knew it was going to be good because I know you are a professional. You just top notch, man. I just want to let you know right here in front of everybody know that you are a stand-up guy, man.
Thank
and
you.
I appreciate you being a part of our circle. And more importantly, I appreciate you being a friend.
Absolutely.
Thank you for letting me in.
Yeah.
And I thank you. I've taken 3 classes with the both of you, and I'm a better man because of it. And I thank you for what you've poured into me, what I've learned from you, how I've developed as a result of it, and how I can use the skills and gifts that you've given to me to build the kingdom and help others. So I come here humbly as your student, but thanking you for the invitation to give back what you both have given to me.
Amen.
Amen.
You're not gonna get us crying.
You're not gonna get us, man, tonight. That was a good one.
I tried. Because who always got you crying? Kenya. Kenya had your big class. Kenya was the waterworks. Kenya would get everybody crying, especially Will. So yeah, I tried.
Where is Will? Anyway, he's somewhere crying. Yeah,
he's crying.
Oh man. So Anastasia got another thank you, sir.
Thank you, Anastasia.
Yeah.
Thank you. Hey, Anastasia, I done took notes, and Feedback Friday is in my future. Okay, I'm just letting you know. Feedback
That's
Friday
nice.
is in my future. Okay, so
that's nice.
Yes. Don't think I wasn't taking notes. Feedback Friday is in my future.
All right, Doctor. So the name of this station channel was called Taking the Next Step. So for our listeners, what's the next step, man?
Hey, well, the next step is get in touch with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
The next step is get through this.
Mm-hmm.
The next step is to listen to what other people are saying to you. The next step is to take charge of your own self-care and mental health care. And the next step is to recognize that these are difficult times and we are all vulnerable to an unprecedented assault on our mental health, on our physical health, on our livelihood, and no one knows what the end is going to look like. So don't forget the biological, don't forget the psychological, and please don't forget the theological. All three. Don't pick one over the other. All three.
Great recap. Great way to close your presentation. That was solid. That was very solid. Thank you, Dr. Mark, for coming out again. Karen, anything? You good?
No, just we love you. We appreciate you. You, like Antonio already said, you've been a brother and a friend to us, and we've enjoyed the connection with you.
Thank you.
God has definitely knit us together, so we thank God for you, and thank you so much for all the wisdom that you shared tonight.
Yeah, off the chain.
I mean, I think the chat right now is
it's still coming up,
showing how much it is appreciated what you shared. And so thank you. And we expect an invitation to the wedding, but I'm just saying.
Hey, it's in. You coming? And Anita, because Anita gave me some new names instead of him. so Anita helped the brother out. Reverend Terry, thank you. Thank you, Reverend Terry. Always a blessing to see you, even just to see your name. Thank you. Thank you, Sister Stacy or Sister Stace. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Crackers to Caviar. Thank you, Reverend Cooper. Thank all of you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for listening. Thank you, my sister Eva, my sister Anita. Holy and healthy. Thank you. Holy, I appreciate it. Thank you, Brother Vaughn. Brother Vaughn is my partner in crime, man. He's your boy. He's your boy, but he's my partner in crime.
I love it.
He's your boy, but he's my partner in crime.
Yeah. But oh my God, you know what? We gotta go. We're gonna keep doing this for another hour. We gotta shut this thing down. Hold it, Pam Coleman. This was okay. Let me bring these up.
Thank you, Sister Coleman. Sister Coleman, thank you very much. Your feedback, it means a lot to me. Thank you. I'm glad you learned a lot. Thank you very, very much.
Pam, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe so this information keep on coming.
That's why I'm here.
Go ahead and subscribe so it keep coming. So what we got here? Love you guys. We love you back. Mm-hmm. We love you
Anita.
back. So
and Anita, I'm trying to get tickets to the play that you guys went to. So Anita and they went and saw Rich Man, Poor Soul.
Oh, is that the Jenkins production?
Yeah. Because spiritual gifts class, we got so close. We have our own community.
That y'all do.
We play spades, and we got our own.
Better stop playing.
Yeah, we got our. So
That's
awesome. We going to the park. We chilling.
I love it.
You created a community that we are connected and will remain connected moving forward. That's rare.
Yeah,
that's rare in a class.
That's wonderful.
Yeah,
glad to hear that. That is wonderful. Well, listen, Dr. Mark.
Just Mark. Call me Dr. Mark.
Hey, we only doing this on air, man. Usually we call you like Mark, man. Look, let me tell you something.
Like, look at him. Come closer. I'm just playing. Thank you so much for all that you shared. Really and truly, we appreciate you. We appreciate the dedication, the diligence, and just everything that you've poured into your craft. And the gifts that you're allowing to come forward. We thank God for that, because I think you're just starting to hit the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more coming for you, and we are excited to see it all unfold in your life. And so we thank God for you. We pray for that God will continue to bless you, bless you as you go forward, bless you in your marriage, and in everything that God has for you.
Thank you.
We just look forward to that.
Sister Cynthia, thank you. The voice. If I could get my voice to be as smooth as Sister Terry did.
Yeah, you ever hear Sister Terry when she presides?
Oh.
You ever hear that? Yes.
It's like butter.
Yes.
You just swoop so smooth.
Yes.
Stacy, we were just talking about you the other day. I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before. Karen said, I gotta call her to see how she's doing. So look for a connection. Karen's going to be reaching out to you.
Here, Sister Stacy. Yep, I sure was talking about you.
Yeah, that was
Good
just
to
the
see
other
you.
day.
Yep.
All
Maybe
right.
a day or two ago.
Hey guys, we got to go. Be back
right.
here tomorrow. Same. Hey Mark, same bat time, same bat channel. He was like, "What do you know about that?" I said, "I know about that." We'll see you tomorrow. Thank you guys for coming out. Mark, don't go nowhere. But hey, rest of y'all stay and be easy. God bless you. And see you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Good night, everyone.